Welcome to Being Curious podcast show, proudly supported by Moss Skin, a UK-based skincare line infused with sea moss. Good afternoon, Laura. It's lovely to meet you today. I know that we've had a brief chat. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of, that bio stuff that we all need before we get started in an interview? So who are you? What do you do? Where are you located in the world? All those big things.
Okay, I should have prepared this. I've just remembered. Sadly, I've been at work all day, but so I'm Laura. I'm a northerner, as you can hear from my accent, although I've lived in London half of my life. I was brought up in a small town called Barrow-in-Furness, which is in Cumbria, the Lake District. It's in the northwest of England, and it's always terrible weather. I grew up here, and I managed to escape when I was 20. And I went to university and studied fashion design, in which I've carved a career for myself and travelled all around the world, and enjoyed living in London. And sadly, my life took a little bit of a curveball turn, and I had to come back to Barrow when I found myself dependent on alcohol. And I'm now taking a new direction in my life, trying to retrain and help other women and other people that struggle from the things that I have in my life. Yes.
Wow, that is quite comprehensive, and each section feels like a lot. I want to just go backwards a bit, because you said that you're from the northwest, but you also kind of grew up in the south. Do you feel like a northerner, or do you feel international because you've travelled? The north is your roots, but I suppose, what is the tree? What are the leaves? What are the branches of you?
I think that the leaves are very colourful and exploratory, and basically I see myself as being able to fit in anywhere, because of the way in which I've travelled, and also just because of I've got a very open heart, and I'm very eager to learn about other people and other ways of living. I realised that my upbringing here in the north was I was quite naive, sheltered almost, and yeah, so my roots are here. I'm a northerner through and through because of my heart is here, and my family's here, and I believe, people say that northerners are very friendly and very, kind, and I have those qualities, but I see myself as, I feel like I'm a bit of a gypsy. I feel that
really?
I do have gypsy blood, Romany gypsy blood, actually,
yeah.
But I don't feel I'm ever meant to be situated in a place, for forever.
For too long. Do you find yourself wanting to move? Like you said that you kind of escaped from the north and then you ended up in the south. What drove you to leave? Because I can imagine, by the sounds of it, although I know the name of where you lived, I don't know much about it. And in my head, being a person of colour, being a black woman, I can't imagine there's a lot of diversity there. And then you've kind of gone out into the world. So what drove you out into the world, do you think?
Just my passions, my ambition. I've always strived to be the best that I could possibly be. And even as a child, that my goals were always to be better and to strive for something more. And for me, Barrow is quite claustrophobic, and there's so many. I'm a very inquisitive person. and I want, I just want to be able to learn more and see more, and that's always been the case ever since I was a child.
Did you get encouraged, or do you take after anyone in your family, or are you an anomaly in your family, and so you're very different from the rest of the family in terms of
Yeah.
your curiosity?
Yes, I am. I think everyone's quite was quite surprised when I announced that I was going to uni, and that I wanted to be an artist. I didn't have a particular job, a professional career. As in, my mum's a nurse, my dad's in the motor industry. I grabbed onto the thing of saying, like young girls do, oh, I want to be a nurse, but I was thinking, I don't really want to be a nurse. I want to, be an artist and, and explore things. And so pretty much I just decided, and with no help from anyone else, really. My parents just almost just said, well, all right, go and do, if that's what you want to do, go and do it.
That's lovely, isn't it? Because that's to say that you want to be an artist and you kind of knew that was what you want to be, but also to have your family support you. That sounds really lovely. What type of art, and who's your early influences in terms of an artist then?
Well, there's a local artist actually called John Duffin, and he used to do really beautiful pictures of the scenery in Barrow, because it is a very scenic place. So I loved his artwork. But I've always, well, as a young child, I loved artists, as in like Madonna. I loved the way that she expressed herself with, she was at the forefront of fashion at her time. I remember all the outfits, and I used to make my own outfits and things like that. So I was always very creative in that sense. I loved Andy Warhol because I would see his pop art, and I absolutely love colour, and I love the simplicity of the screen print. So my interests are just an amalgamation of lots of different influences.
So when you went to college, or when you left home and you went off to university, what did you study?
I studied fashion design.
Did you?
Yes, I realised that I did a BTEC in art and design foundation, and I loved that art side, but I was, practically, I was thinking, I don't think many artists actually make it unless you're absolutely, that type of person who is a bit bohemian and can really throw themselves out there, which I didn't think I was. So I then realised that, my love for fashion wasn't just simply a girly love for fashion and what I wear. It was more, oh, look what I can create, and that's how it developed into fashion design. So that's what I did. And
so where did you go to study? Because I think when we kind of spoke, when we introduced ourselves, I also went to art college and ended up doing textiles. So I'm really curious about, where did you go? And what type of course, and what was it like to be a student of art and fashion?
I didn't have the traditional student time experience. I was in a long-term relationship from a young age, and unfortunately that was a very controlling relationship, and I came against some opposition from him, and so I chose to go to the University of Central Lancashire, which is in Preston, and I limited my choices simply because of that relationship. However, and so I didn't go and actually live a student life. I commuted.
Oh, because you was so you was in a relationship that was quite controlling. Did that person get that you were an artist? And if you could have your time again, where would you have wanted to go? Or
I would have probably gone to London earlier.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it like then to go to uni or go to college and be in a relationship? Because I suppose I'm wondering that you're quite young then, and you know, but you're also having quite adult responsibilities as well in terms
Yeah.
of a relationship. Was you living with a person?
Yes, I was. Yeah, and that was very difficult, especially because that person didn't understand what it felt like to have, you know, ambition, and a drive to do something different. So they could only see really what they see on films and what they hear, in that people go to uni to have fun and to sleep around and to party and get drunk, and I wasn't going for that reason. So I was met with some, you know, quite an opposing attitude, resistance. Yeah.
What happened next then? Was you able to, even at the choice that you know, the place that you chose, was you able to be expressive in the way that you want? Was it a progressive college, university, or were you limited in some ways?
It was very good. The course was very good, and I was able to, I was in a really lovely class, and you know, I started to find myself, and I think that then that's the point where I started to pull away slightly from Barrow and from my relationship. The relationship ruptured actually, and so my course was a 4-year course, and in the 3rd year I got to go and spend a year in industry. So I lived in Liverpool for a year, and that was when everything became colourful, and I started to feel, you know, I saw what the industry was like, and I saw what life was like outside of Barrow, and I knew that that's what I wanted.
So when you went to Liverpool for the first time, was that the first time you lived in a big city life, or but also surrounded probably more of people like yourself in terms of being creative? What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. I finally, you know, I thought, oh wow, this is independence. You know, I actually got a really good position. It was actually for the mail order company Littlewood, so they were very established at that point. You know, and I got to add to the stories. You know, some of my things went into the catalogue, and that for me was just amazing.
What was it like then for your first piece of work to go into the catalogues? I remember Littlewoods back in the day. Everyone had Littlewoods, didn't they?
Yeah. It was, you know, it was like a small town girl. That song's just come to mind. Small town girl living in a lonely world. Like, it was, you know, it was unbelievable for me to know that I actually had achieved that, and what had happened. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe that things are meant to happen for a reason, and it just gave me more hunger for more. And that relationship actually did end in my final year. So I knew then that I wasn't coming back to Barrow. I just couldn't do that.
And as you grew and you stayed in, you know, you did a gap, you worked in industry for a year in Liverpool. What happened next then on your journey? Because I know that you've talked about a substance use in terms of alcohol when you traveled the world. So how did you leave university and where did you go next?
I left uni. I applied for jobs. I got a job that was based in Watford, just outside of London, and that was for Liz Claiborne, and they were actually relocating to Amsterdam. So I took that job with a view to knowing that I was going to be in London for a little bit, but then I was going to be in a different country. So that kind of got my, you know, my taste buds interested, and I went and I did that role for 3 years, and I came back, and I knew that London was going to be the place where I would settle.
So where we went. So when you went to Amsterdam, so Holland, did you learn Dutch? Because it's quite a difficult language to learn, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, it is, and I did have lessons, but every time I taught in Dutch, people would just talk back in English, so I never learned very much.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it was a beautiful experience. It's a beautiful country, and Amsterdam is wonderful, and I loved it. I loved it there.
And then how old was you around about that age?
I probably was 24 when I came back from there, I think. 25 maybe. So I lived there from say 21 to 24, 22, something like that. Yeah.
Earlier, you talked about kind of having alcohol issues. So did that start then or earlier, or
No,
did it start with...
my alcoholism started more recent. So when I was 40, I'm now 46. So I like to say, so I go to meetings, I say I'm an addict because what I now, having done a recovery program, I now realize that throughout my life, even as a child, I was always addicted to something, whether that be doing my best at school, winning the race, being in the netball team, pushing myself, going to uni. Then when I started my job, I started at the bottom, and I pushed myself, and I started as a junior assistant, was design assistant, then I was assistant, then I was designer, then I was design manager, then I was head of design. I'm talking over many years throughout my jobs. So I was I was addicted to my career.
It's interesting that you say that, because people kind of think about addiction as alcohol or some substance, or process addiction, gambling, and they don't recognize often work or anything that becomes maladaptive. So you might have a passion, but if you're only aiming for one particular kind of vision, it can just be really maladaptive, and so you don't end up doing other things other than the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then how did it creep up then? Did you recognize it once you started going into recovery, or did you notice that the way that you approached work was slightly different from other people?
Well, I just thought that was my passion and my drive, to be honest. It's only through going through the recovery process that I'm now piecing together. It sounds so silly that being the age that I am at 46, I'm only now starting to understand myself, because through my life I've had working as an addiction, then I've had codependence, so it was my relationships, and then it became, I've had an eating disorder since I was a young child, since about the age of 7. I've had body dysmorphia. So that in essence is an addiction on me, perfectionism, So I've always had something that I had to strive for. And basically what came to fruition back 7 years ago, when a long-term relationship ended, and sadly what unraveled was awful, and I started relying on other things rather than the relationship. I was using food at the same time as a crutch, but then I was made redundant because the fashion industry had suddenly started to change, and I was a well-paid member of a team, and I got the chop because of that reason, and I just found myself with nothing to do. And I was in London. I had no partner. I lost my home because of the situation with him. I had no job. I felt very, very lonely, no purpose, no income. I felt like my life had slipped before me, and I started to use alcohol in the way
of coping. Yeah, it's interesting because I think alcohol is probably the most used substance amongst women. We tend to kind of be drawn, as well as food, but we tend to be more likely to be drawn towards alcohol. But there's something also about the timing of things, isn't there, for you? Because you're in London and you've had lots of losses, coming to an end in relationship, coming to an end in terms of your job, coming to an end in terms of your accommodation, and maybe you're also kind of feeling quite isolated as well.
Yeah.
Did you see the signs beforehand, or was you just blown over that you didn't see it all coming?
No, I didn't see it coming. I was using alcohol as a crutch because it made me feel better. It helped me laugh. I just watched, rubbish telly, and I was able to escape from the things that were going on inside my head. And I never once dreamed that that would become a problem. I thought, this is fine. I can cope with this. This is just a temporary measure while I'm in this bad way. And I am the type of person, I'm very independent. I don't like to ask for help. I don't like to tell people when I'm down. I don't like to be a burden. So I carried all of this as well. And really, it only came out in the open because I have a sleep disorder, and I was letting myself out of the flat during what I was supposed to be asleep, but I was awake. And I was wandering through the streets of London, and I was doing things in the middle of the night, and dangerous things. And one incident was I actually got caught. That I was in a dream, but I was actually acting it out. And the police had to take me back to my house because I was dressed. It was winter, and I was dressed like not in decent. I was in lightweight pajamas.
So is it like a sleepwalking kind of scenario that you? But was it exacerbated by the alcohol as well? So you would get up, and then you would act out what you thought was normal, but in a dream. But actually, in reality, you're outside in London in a very vulnerable position. And
it's called.
Sorry,
it's called parasomnia. So it's where I'm in a half asleep, half awake state. And to answer your question, that was how it became apparent that I had this sleep disorder, because I got into trouble for wandering around, and I spent the time in hospital because I had a really terrible accident during one of these episodes and almost died. And that's when I was in the hospital, and obviously tests were done, and they were asking me how much I drank, and they were alarmed. And I was like, why are you alarmed? This is not sure people drink the same as me. And that's when it became
they kind of realized that actually you were drinking far more than the kind of recommended dose. And I'm looking at you, and you're quite petite, so I can imagine the consumption of alcohol would act differently on you compared to someone like myself who's bigger bodied frame. But in terms of women, like for like, we cannot drink the same as men. I just want to draw you back a bit, because you've talked about from the age of 7 you've been struggling. Has your sleep disorder always been part of your growing upbringing?
Yes, yeah.
And is it a hereditary thing that's kind of happening?
I don't think so. I always had very, very vivid nightmares and would sleepwalk, and people, parents, family just put that down to just being a child, and that's what children do, but it continued all the way through my life. I just thought that, it's just me. It's just because I'm an overthinker. It's because I've got a vivid imagination. It's because I'm creative. I don't go to sleep fully. I didn't ever imagine that it's possibly, my physiology. It's I'm only now starting to realize that I have ADHD, possibly autism, that, that all of these things that I thought were just Laura were actually things that I'm not describing this very well, but
no, I think you are. I think it really does make sense. And it's interesting that you kind of find people who are highly creative have ADHD, a neurodivergence of some kind, on the spectrum in some way, as well as kind of contending with other additional stuff, addiction and mental health, also kind of within those kind of areas as well.
Yeah.
And it's hard then. when you going back to what you were saying, kind of growing up and not necessarily feeling connected, did you struggle with education? You're extremely artistic, but did you struggle academically with education when you was growing up? Or
No, not at all. I'm an overachiever, and it makes me cringe to say that because I don't like to sound egotistical. But I always did very, very well. But I did put the work in. But I'm naturally good. I seem to naturally be good at many things. And so I actually, you asking me that has just brought up a memory that, I was so good at school that I used to cheat and pretend that I hadn't got 10 out of 10 or I hadn't got 9 out of 10. I'd say, oh, I got that one wrong. Because I've got this other part of me, this anxiety disorder, this part of me that has very low self-esteem and very low self-worth, and that has been another thing throughout my years, that I didn't like to be centre of attention. So if I got really good grades, even though I strived for good grades and to be the best, when I did get those, I was like, oh, I don't want any credit. It's
that must have been really difficult to kind of, I'm saying kind of a lot, but it must be really difficult when you are naturally kind of or work hard. Maybe there's a combination there, isn't there? That actually you have a high IQ, but you also work hard to achieve the IQ. But when you get the attention, it feels like you don't want to be there. There's some shame in it. Whereas if you were maybe in other schools where they celebrated everyone's achievement, I wonder if you would have felt much more comfortable. Or is it in the family of origin that being bright is not the thing that you do in your family? Maybe your family's more practical, more agricultural intelligence or more emotional intelligence, but don't value intellect and kind of vision and creativity so much.
I don't know. It's an interesting one that I have considered before. I don't know. I just think that I am just, I mean, I don't like to use the word weirdo, but I think to myself, I am a little bit of a weirdo. And that's okay with me as well, because I am quirky. I do think differently. And it's only since the ADHD thing came up when, during one of my therapy sessions, the therapist actually suggested, I think you possibly are, and maybe that would help you understand your reasonings and the way you've thought for all of your life, that I just thought was me being strange, like just a weirdo.
I'm listening to you and I'm just thinking, you're making me think about my own life, because we're quite similar in terms of experiences. So I went to art college and my family just really didn't get the fact that I was a creative. And my cousin used to hide every time I used to visit her in Tesco's. She would hide because I would be wearing granddad shirts and morning gowns and Tonka toys wrapped around my neck. So I was very into being an artist and a creative time. But I think there's something about what you said in terms of thinking. When you're a creative and you're thinking and you don't necessarily fit in because you just see the world slightly different. It's almost like slightly offbeat. Everyone is in color and you're slightly in sepia or black and white. Or you're in color and everyone else is in black and white and sepia.
Yeah, that's the one, I think.
Do you think it's that way around for you?
Yeah.
What makes you feel that then? What is it about that idea that appeals to your thinking?
I don't know if it's, gosh, I hate to sort of talk about my hometown like this, but I feel like everything's grey in this town, and that could be because the weather is always quite rubbish and quite grey, although the sun's coming out now, so I should take my words back. But I feel there isn't a lot of open-mindedness. And for me, I mean, when I talk about things, I visualize. I'm a very visual person, so I visualize actions. I visualize what I'm saying, and for me, it's almost like I can see color, but around me, I see that people are down, or going through troubles perhaps, and then that seems to me like it might be grey. I don't think I've really answered your question, but
no, but I also wonder if you're really intuitive. I wonder, because you've had to kind of make yourself small in parts of your life, but also very bright, vibrant. It's interesting because I always think that creative people are a lot shyer than most. That they let the work stand for themselves, and I wonder, because you're artistic and that because you also have leadership qualities, but I wonder if there's that inner part of you that's really quite shy, and
yes,
so intuitive. You can see things that other people can't see because you look at things differently.
Yeah, no, I do feel that. I am actually very shy, but it's so strange, that contrast, that I haven't seemed to quite figure out the balance just yet, because I am very shy and I don't like to show off, but yet I dress in such a way that possibly people would think I'm a show off, as in I dress in a colourful way, and I do explore different quirks, and I forgot where I was going with that now. But yes, so amid the shyness, there is that brightness as well. But I'm a highly sensitive empath, and I feel energies, I feel people around me. Sometimes as a woman, that can be quite hard. I found that's been quite a hard part of my journey.
In what way? In what way, as a woman, do you feel that it's been hard?
Because for me, it feels natural to give and to love and to care for and to be kind. That's my natural stance. However, that can sometimes be taken and used, and to my detriment. And also, because I care about people, it makes me feel down, because I am that type of person, an empath. I could see someone crossing the road, like an older gentleman, and immediately it's like my heart just swells, and I think, oh gosh, even though they may be perfectly happy, I immediately think, oh, what if that person's alone? I wonder if I could help him with his shopping, or and
so you really go into quite an empathic space where you're really thinking about other people, where most people might think it and might not act on it. It will pop up and then disappear. Yeah. Whereas it sounds like for you, it just feels like it engulfs you more. I wonder also, when you say that that you're empathic, and there's something about being a female, that oxytocin part, isn't it? Women tend to be more relational, and I know I'm kind of probably, I don't want to kind of think we're all the same, because I think it's a spectrum, but there is something about being a female that we might think of others, but for you, it makes you feel, does it make you feel kind of more stressed or more sad or more hopeful or just wanting to do something? I wonder if I got that right.
Yeah, I do. It makes me feel quite sad, quite vulnerable. Through doing the work that I've done in my recovery, we do a lot of work on how we react with people. And in a thing, I don't know if you're aware of the 12 steps, but in step 4, I have to write down, feelings that I've had towards other people, that we call resentments or, harms. And And I realized that I've given away a lot of myself, to the point where, as a female, I'm wondering who I am at this stage in my life. This is kind of what's happening at the moment. So whilst I've in the past felt a lot of sadness because I give a lot of myself away to the point where I don't know who I am, I'm also really grateful at the moment because I'm now starting to come into my own at this ripe old age, it feels, but I feel absolutely, that this beautiful life that's opening up in front of me as a result of doing recovery as a program, learning about myself, learning where I've gone wrong in the past, and also noticing my self-worth, and that I don't have to give everything away to be that kind of person.
It's interesting you're saying that, because is it 46?
Yeah.
I think there's also something about the transitioning. What comes into my head listening to you is the journey of like premenopausal, menopausal.
Yeah.
And then there's something about redefining or coming to our own in our 50s or coming up to 50, where what applied to you in your earlier years doesn't apply. So I am in my late 50s now, and I think I came into my own as I traveled into being 50. But the skin that I'm having to let go and the butterfly that you find yourself in, or the cocoon, and you're kind of popping out to be a butterfly, that is the journey in itself. And sometimes it can be really difficult because I think you're right. Who am I? Who are you?
Yes, no, absolutely. And you don't look in your late 50s, by the way. I do have to say that. You look amazing.
It's
Yes.
amazing what slap does.
Well, that's another thing that, I'm contending with at the moment. And it's hard being this age. Again, it like I'll quote what the doctor says to me when I can actually get an appointment. The doctor says to me that, "Oh, you are quite complex," and that's because I've had addiction, alcohol issues. I've also have mental health issues ongoing. There's the ADHD whole spectrum thing. Then there's the thoughts that perimenopause. I do feel like I am a bit of a mishmash of a lot of different things at the moment, and I don't know which is which.
But it's also interesting because I think GPs don't do enough about women's health. So for women kind of transitioning into perimenopausal or menopause, because of the hormone fluctuation, so that can start 10 years earlier, you find women feeling quite depressed or have anxiety. So I never had any anxiety until a couple of years ago. And then I had thoughts that felt really slightly off, because I'm a woman that kind of wakes up and the day resets and I think the world is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and feeling, oh my gosh, the day hasn't reset. I feel really crap. But actually, now that the hormones are settled down, I feel a lot better. And then the other thing about ADHD, or autism, there's a kind of link between the mental health side.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's because you're complex. I just think I think it's just that you, like many women, we don't get an opportunity to kind of be seen holistically.
Yes.
In a certain way. And I don't think doctors are able or have the training to deal with all the nuances of what it means to be a woman. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that's why part of the reason why I chose to retrain and go into holistic creative art therapy, because I know the struggles that I've been through, and I know how hard it is to find solution and get support and help. And I like to think that lived experience, is a really attractive quality for someone who is struggling. So I'm hoping that, I'd like to help women, people in general, but women, because I know what I've gone through, and
Mm. It sounds like an amazing course. So, what is holistic art therapy? And of all the trainings around kind of psychotherapy and counselling, what drew you to this particular training compared to other ones out there?
well, because of where I was, so I started it 2 years ago. I was back in Barrow, which wasn't fulfilling for me as a person. I'm in recovery. Recovery has to be my first and foremost, priority. And so in Barrow, I can't get a job in fashion. There's not really a great deal of choice I can do. So because of the struggles that I was having around recovery, around me as a person, my opinions of myself, my mental health, all of the things, the struggles in my head, I wanted to try and, I was thinking, should I go into recovery? Should I work in a recovery place? But then, because I'm such an empath, I knew probably, oh gosh, that's going to be really tough for me. So I started just to look at different ways of sort of helping others, and I came across this course, and it was a creative course, but with a bit of, I know bits about psychology. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but to be able to deliver creative modalities to help people understand themselves and express themselves in a way that just feels natural and not structured as in a therapy session. Let go and see what comes to you. Move or listen to music, splash some paint, like create some clay work, and you find that whilst you're doing such creative things like that, that you start to understand yourself, and you drop your guard and you're able to talk because it's fluid and you're not concentrating on answering questions and so on. So that helped me, understanding that I knew that that's what helped me, and therefore I might be able to help other people in that way as well.
So is it like a 3-year course or more?
It's 2 years. It's HICAT. It's so holistic, integrated, creative art therapy. So I learn about anxiety, fight or flight, about the brain, and our electrical impulses, and all the things that give us our natural reactions, and how we can calm them down by breathing, meditation, by doing creative things. So it's all kind of intertwined.
It sounds really lovely, and it's interesting because when I first finished my degree many years ago, I wanted to be an art therapist. But I think at the time, I don't think I was resilient enough to be able to do it, because you have to go on a journey of things. So I've ended up as a therapist, but working with creatives in a completely different way. But when I'm listening to you talking about your course, it marries really well with who you are. I can see all the different things you could bring to the space in terms of helping others. So is it usually done in a group way, or do you work with individuals and families, or how does it work?
I mean, it can be anything. My plan is to set up my business once I've graduated. I probably will need to start off in community situations or doing groups. But I would like to work one-to-one. I've got many ideas about how that would play out. I guess it's just exploring what works for me and works for other people.
How's this course helped you with your own mental health? Because you kind of said, your GP has recognised how complex you are in terms of your own mental health and kind of suspected ADHD and also other kind of neurological conditions that you have. How has this course helped you?
Well, it has been a journey for me. Certainly. I think the main takeaway for me is that I am capable, more than capable, and it's okay for me to say that I am more than capable. But in doing all of the practices, so I've had to do a lot of, creative work, and I struggled at first because it had to be right. I am a perfectionist. It had to have, the end product had to be spot on. And what I've realized is that it's not about the end product at all. It's about the process. It's about the way of thinking. It's about expression, and taking all of those things in and using them as a lesson in my journey. And I think that is the main takeaway, that I've strived for so long to just keep pushing and pushing my abilities, and actually all of that time I'm wasting because I'm not being present, I'm not being mindful, and this course has taught me to enjoy the process, and we learn.
Yeah, I'm listening to you and I'm smiling because actually I really recognize what you said, because I came from a creative background and went to uni. And one of the things is producing something, and that external validation that you get from a maker when you produce something, and either your tutor says that they like it, or when you have shows, your fellow students love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Whereas actually sometimes you miss who you are, which is actually being in the process of making. I think one of probably my most successful parts of me has been immersed in doing something that I love, which might not even be complete, might not even be what I thought it was going to be, but the fact that it's part of me, an extension of me.
Yes.
And when I'm listening to you, it just feels quite exciting what you are doing and the possibilities that you have.
Yeah, I think so. It's a huge lesson for me. I've realized through doing this course that I've put too much pressure on myself throughout my life, and no one else is to blame. Isn't the right word, but that was all down to me. And if I could just help people recognize that whatever they do is good enough, what I do is good enough because I've tried and I've put my all into it. And I think that basically it's a great analogy for life in general. I have spent my whole life overthinking and over worrying when probably most of those things didn't even ever happen. And it feels quite, a grief, I suppose, of wasted time. And I'm even going through horrendous things, like last year was quite a terrible year for me, and even going through the pain of addiction, and I realized that things are meant to happen that way, because as a result I'm now flourishing and coming out, and I've learned so much about myself that's what I want to pass on to other people. Yeah.
What would you say to your younger self? You've got this wisdom now that not only are you flourishing and you're growing, if you could go back in time, what would you say to your younger self so that they would know that you were okay, or that you've learned something? What would you say to them?
Well, I actually do this little meditation where I do a lot of grounding work and breath work, and I meet myself in my future. And obviously this is a process within this meditation, and I meet myself, and it's myself on at the end of my life, and I imagine what Laura would say to me, and it is simply enjoy every moment, don't sweat the small stuff. You are beautiful and you've got a lot to give, and think of the bigger picture. You're only one tiny little minuscule element in this huge massive universe. And so I do this meditation, and it sometimes it is a reminder to me of what I would say to myself, because I can get completely, you know, so into a situation or a problem that you don't think of the bigger picture. So yeah, I would just say those things.
Thank you, Laura, for being curious with Counselling Reflections. I really appreciate the journey that you've allowed me to be on with you. And thank you for being really open and sharing your experiences. I think a lot of people could take something from this conversation today. And I just really appreciate that you also can go into the future and have a conversation that is just so beautiful and profound in your journey. And maybe sometimes we just have to experience life, and life can be muddy and messy. And the fact that you're coming out and that you're not only doing something for yourself but for others, that it feels really beautiful. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Cornetta. It's been wonderful speaking to you.
Oops.